7 Cameroonian soldiers were killed in a single morning. No warning, no prior threat, just a flash, a blast, and then silence. The ambush happened on September 5th, 2025, near Malende, a rural stretch of road in the country's southwest region. Now, this is the kind of place you don't normally hear on the news until something goes horribly wrong. And that's exactly what just happened. The group that claimed responsibility calls themselves the Fako Unity Warriors. Until now, they were barely a footnote in the long list of armed separatist groups fighting for Ambazonia, the self-declared independent state they want to carve out of Cameroon's English-speaking regions. But this roadside bombing changed everything. This wasn't just another isolated act of violence in a forgotten war. This was a calculated, high-profile attack just 5 weeks before Cameroon's most critical presidential election in decades. And the timing is also telling. On the exact same day that 2 Ambazonian commanders were indicted in the United States for financing this rebellion from Minnesota, the Fako Unity Warriors made their bloody entrance onto the national stage. This attack reveals the dangerous reality of state failure brewing in Central Africa, a region already on edge. It's a sign that the old guards of power are losing their grip, and in the vacuum, new, more radical forces are now rising. So who are they? Where did this shadow group come from? And why did they strike now with such deadly precision? In this episode, we are going to dive deep into who these shadow warriors are, how this hidden war started, and why the world's oldest president is pushing his country to the absolute brink of collapse. Let's break it down. It happened in seconds. A routine patrol turned into a death trap. 7 soldiers gone. No one saw it coming. On the morning of Friday, September 5th, a military convoy was moving along a dirt road near the village of Malende. This is deep in Cameroon's southwest region, an area that has been the epicenter of a brutal 8-year-long conflict. For weeks, the military have been sweeping this area, hunting for the exact weapon that will kill their men. An improvised explosive device, or IED. They knew the threat was there. They couldn't find it. The bomb, buried and waiting, was detonated with little precision, ripping through the lead vehicle and killing everyone inside instantly. Now, while the government in the capital, Yaoundé, remained largely silent, refusing to officially comment, the separatists were quick to claim their victory online. A group calling itself the Fako Unity Warriors took responsibility. Now, for most Cameroonians, the name meant nothing. They weren't one of the well-known militias that dominated the headlines. They were, until that moment, ghosts. This attack was timed for maximum impact. It came just 5 weeks before the country's October 12th presidential election. An election where the 92-year-old incumbent Paul Biya is running for an unprecedented 8th term. The message was clear and brutal. While the political elite in the capital prepared for a coronation, the war in the Anglophone regions was not only raging but also evolving, becoming more sophisticated and deadly. But this wasn't just an attack, it was a statement. And to decode it, we have to go deeper into the war that Cameroon has tried so desperately to hide from the world. They weren't even on the military's radar. So how did a ghost group pull off the most deadly ambush of the year? The Fako Unity Warriors seem to have materialized out of thin air, but their emergence follows a very specific pattern in this conflict. The name itself is a clue. Fako is the name of the administrative division where the attack took place, home to the regional capital Biu and the strategic port of Limbe. Now, this geographic branding is common among separatist militias in Cameroon. Groups like the Biu Unity Warriors, the Tigers of Ambazonia in the Manyu region, or the Red Dragons of Liabialem all root their identity in the specific territory they control. They are hyper-local, often born from local grievances and commanded by men from the community. Now, this localization is both a strength and a weakness. It means these groups have deep roots and enjoy a degree of local support, or at the very least, terrified silence. But it also means the movement lacks a central command. because the Fako Unity Warriors, like the dozens of other micro-militias, operate with a high degree of autonomy. So while some may loosely align with larger factions, they often act based on their own agenda, driven by local commanders who are essentially warlords. Their tactics are evolving. The use of a sophisticated IED shows a level of technical skill that is a significant step up from the simple ambushes and kidnappings that characterized the early days of this rebellion. They are learning, adapting, and becoming more effective killers. And they understand the power of information. Their swift claim of responsibility online, amplified by diaspora-run social media accounts, ensured their name was known across the world within hours. But the Fako Unity Warriors are just one piece of a much larger, fractured, and chaotic rebel map. A rebellion now splitting from within. Dozens of rebel groups, no single leader, and no clear strategy. So who's really in charge of the Ambazonia war? The simple answer is no one. The Ambazonian separatist movement is a chaotic ecosystem of competing militias, rival government in exiles, and commanders who often trust their own authority more than any overreaching structure. On paper, there are umbrella groups like the Ambazonian Self-Defense Council, which is supposed to coordinate various factions. But in reality, the rebellion is deeply fragmented. The most well-known groups is the Ambazonia Defense Forces, led by the diaspora-based Lucas Ayabacho. But even his authority is constantly challenged. Other powerful groups like the Tigers of Ambazonia and the Southern Cameroon's Defense Forces operate independently. This fragmentation is the conflict driving force. On one hand, it makes the rebellion incredibly resilient. If the government captures or kills one leader, another one simply pops up to take his place. There is no single head to cut off. But on the other hand, it makes the conflict almost impossible to resolve. Who do you negotiate with? A deal struck with one faction will be rejected by another, often violently. This internal rivalry has led to a brutal tough wars between separatist groups who fight each other over territory, resources, and influence. Local communities are caught in the middle, terrorized not only by the military but also by the very liberation fighters who claim to be protecting them. This power vacuum has allowed local warlords to rise, many of whom are more interested in extortion, kidnapping for ransom, and controlling illicit trade routes than any political ideology. The dream of an independent Ambazonia has for many on the ground turned into a nightmare of lawlessness. And to understand why this war keeps spiraling, we need to go back to the very beginning, to a promise that was made and then brutally broken. British Cameroon had a choice in 1961. Join the newly independent Nigeria or the newly independent French Cameroon. What they didn't know was that for many of them, both roads lead to erasure. In a United Nations supervised plebiscite, they narrowly voted to join the French Cameroon, creating a new federal state. They were promised that their unique identity, their English language, their common legal system, and their educational traditions will be protected in a two-state federation. This promise was formalized as the Forbian Conference in July 1961. But from the very beginning, it was what activists call a marriage of unequals. The Francophone delegation, led by President Amadou Ahidjo, came with French advisors. The Anglophone leaders came alone. What followed was a slow, systematic dismantling of that federal promise. Because in 1972, Ahidjo held a referendum that abolished the federal system and created a unitary state, concentrating all power in the capital, Yaoundé. The Anglophone states were dissolved, reduced to just two provinces in a country now dominated by Francophone political and cultural ethos. So when Paul Biya took over in 1982, he doubled down on this centralization. The grievances simmered for decades. Then, in late 2016, it all boiled over. Lawyers and teachers took to the street to protest the appointment of French-speaking judges and teachers who couldn't function in their own common law courts and English-speaking schools. They saw it as a final assault on their identity. The government response was not dialogue, it was brute force. Security forces arrested, beat, and killed peaceful protesters. The internet was shut down for months. This brutal crackdown radicalized an entire generation, turning moderate calls for federalism into a full-blown declaration of independence for Ambazonia in 2017. But the battlefield isn't just in the forest of Fako, it's also in the minds of children who have been denied an education. Over 700,000 students have been forced out of school, not because of a natural disaster, but because schools have become the new front lines in this war. For the separatists, government schools are not a place of learning. They are symbols of the Francophone state they want to destroy. They see the curriculum as a tool of assimilation designed to erase Anglophone culture. To enforce this, they declared a total school boycott, a strategy that has had a devastating impact on an entire generation. Now, this isn't just a boycott, it's a war on education itself. Human Rights Watch have documented at least 70 attacks on schools since this crisis began. Teachers have been kidnapped, tortured, and killed. Students have been attacked on their way to class. The most horrific example came in October 2020 at the Mother Francisca International Bilingual Academy in the city of Kumba. Gunmen stormed the school and opened fire on children in their classrooms, murdering 7 students and wounding many more. The separatist logic is as brutal as it is strategic. By shutting down schools, they create a lost generation, a pool of uneducated, unemployed, and angry young men who become easy recruits for their militias. They are deliberately creating chaos to make the regions ungovernable. Parents are left with an impossible choice: risk their children's life by sending them to school or condemn them to a future without education. Many students now try to hide their school uniforms, changing into them only when they are safely inside the school gate. Now, the psychological trauma of this cannot be quantified, because while classrooms are burned down in Cameroon, rebel commanders living safely in the US and Europe are raising money and giving the orders. So, where are the masterminds behind this war? They are not hiding in the bush. They are living in Minnesota, London, and Berlin. They are funding a rebellion with PayPal and giving attack orders over WhatsApp. This is what a 21st century insurgency looks like. A huge portion of the Ambazonian leadership is funding, and its propaganda machine is run by the Cameroonian diaspora, thousands of miles away in the US and Europe. And we know this for a fact. Remember that US indictment that dropped on September 5th, the exact same day as the deadly ambush? It pulled back the curtain on this entire shadow network. 2 men, right in the heart of Minnesota, were charged with providing material support to the rebellion. Prosecutors say they were raising cash on social media, buying weapons, and coordinating attacks using encrypted apps, all from the safety of their homes in America. Now, if you think this is just a Cameroon story, think again, because we are seeing this exact playbook run just across the border. Because in Nigeria's southeast, another separatist crisis for a state called Biafra has been largely directed from overseas. A man named Simon Ekpa, living in Finland, was arrested earlier this year. The charge? Orchestrating violent lockdowns and funding deadly attacks back home, all while leveraging social media to build a global following. One president, 43 years in power, one war, 8 years unresolved. One country slowly tearing itself apart. The upcoming October 12th election is not about democracy. It's a ritual to confirm the inevitable. Because at 92, Paul Biya is the world's oldest head of state, and he is set to win another 7-year term. His strongest opponent has been barred from running, and voting in the war-torn Anglophone regions will be virtually impossible, further undermining the legitimacy of the outcome. Biya's rule has been defined by a simple strategy: brutality. He has refused any meaningful concessions or dialogue to solve the Anglophone crisis, believing he can crush the rebellion with military force. But after 8 years and over 6,500 deaths, that strategy has clearly failed. The country is now facing a terrifying succession crisis. Paul Biya has never named a successor, creating a power vacuum that has the political elite in Yaoundé jockeying for positions. When he eventually leaves the scene, the risk of a chaotic power struggle is incredibly high. Meanwhile, the world remains largely silent. The African Union, terrified of setting a precedent for secession movement, has done little to nothing. The United Nations and Western powers have called for dialogue but have applied no real pressure. Now, this crisis has already spilled over the border, with nearly 90,000 Cameroonian refugees now living in camps in Nigeria, straining resources and creating a new layer of regional instability. This is not just Cameroon's crisis anymore. It is a Pan-African crisis. It is a test of whether our continental institutions and our global diaspora can move beyond hashtags and condemnations to demand real solutions before another nation descends into a full-scale civil war. The attacks by the Fako Unity Warriors is a symptom of this deep sickness, a sickness that elections alone cannot cure. Now, if you have watched to this point, this is Frontline Africa, where we talk about Africa, where we talk about geopolitics from Africa's perspective. We bring the stories that mainstream media don't talk about. In this particular episode, it's about a separatist crisis. Now, in this channel, I always preach about African unity. I always preach about a stronger Africa. I want to put this question to you, my viewers. If you are in Nigeria and Cameroon, this question is for you. Do you think Africa needs more nations, further diluting our continental influence? Or should we keep balkanizing ourselves into smaller, less powerful countries? Now, I am not taking sides or saying that Ambazonia or Biafra is the right thing to do or the wrong thing to do, but it's just an honest journalistic reporting I just did. So go to the comment section and tell us your opinion.
Good thing no dey hide. I talk say good thing no dey hide. When you do good thing, everybody go wan talk about am. In as much as we dey talk say our liberation struggle never gain media attention, I don see am say recently one or few people dem don dey pick in on some happenings. When we focus on our goal, when we focus on our objective, for make sure say the enemy remains one, la République du Cameroon occupational force and their colonial administrator dem. When we focus on this, all other things will be added onto it. I want Amuna share the video. Now video this way, Nkunyam titles no like for watch am. No be we make am. That guy na Naija man. You understand no? No be me I make the video. Now una don't watch and don't see am. Share the video as far as you can. In as much as they do our thing, they focus on our direction, all other things will be added onto us. And freedom we seek, freedom we shall get. Thank you, Fako Unity Warriors. Una place day. Thank you very much. Share the video as far as you can. May God bless you. God bless Ambaland. La République, when they watch the kind of videos, so they vex them. Una don't even hear self La République, their ministry or whatsoever. He talk about that Ekelebe there. They are more remain. Maybe talk nothing because of shame they do them. They don't be confused and frustrated. I will see you again for our next update. Take the one who your skin day. I will see you now. Share them. Tag all that black leg them. La République agent them. Higher. We go now for front. Forward. Shake no day. Thank you now.